All right, welcome back to Freedom Hawk Live. I'm Dean, and sitting in today for Andrew is Annie. And thank you for watching. Please share with your friends and like the video if you enjoy the content. We've got some great topics to discuss today.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Don't forget to subscribe. That always helps us out here on our very new and budding channel, but hopefully we'll get our voice to many more people soon. And the more we can spread our message, share our conservative ideas,
and wake people up.
Wake people up. That's right. We got to wake some of these people up in this country, don't we?
Oh, kind of bitch slap them.
Whoa, careful. Well, speaking of bitch slapping, so probably I guess it goes right in with our first topic today, which is Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden.
So, he had his, they had a big hearing in his case on the laptop and the emails and, the accusations of, influence peddling. What do you think about that, Annie? What can you tell us about Hunter Biden?
He never used his dad. Never used his dad. He did it all on his own. And
well, that's not what he said. I mean, that's not what he said. What did he?
First he was high and drunk and didn't know that he was shaking down a Chinese diplomat. Did he know or did he not know? Did he know if his dad was there? I guess he did it. He was in some kind of drug-induced, fantasy.
So this is what you said, a Chinese diplomat?
Mm-hmm.
And why a Chinese diplomat?
He was asking he was shaking down a Chinese diplomat for money.
For Chinese money?
Yes.
Okay.
For him and his dad.
So not just Ukraine money, but Chinese money also?
This was the Chinese diplomat.
And okay, well, what about, because he was also tied to Ukraine and
the
Burisma.
Ukraine biolabs, yes.
But then you had mentioned earlier as we were getting set up for the show that there were a bunch of shell companies.
About 24 shell companies. Wow. I really don't know much about it. I just know that they had shell companies that they were funneling money through there to the Bidens.
And I heard the same thing. And I guess they like each of the companies had different family members or something.
I think so.
And then they were
different names. Each one had a different name, something like that. It was
and were these companies selling Hunter's artwork?
Oh,
is that what was happening?
The artwork.
Were these art export companies?
Oh my gosh, the artwork. Oh, Hunter Biden, the artist. Oh my gosh.
I know it's almost comical. It's ridiculous.
What I heard was that it was I think a single donor who was a Democrat donor who was buying the artwork. It was more of a money laundering scheme.
Well, clearly. I mean, clearly that's how else do you sell artwork that is the quality of like a 5-year-old child?
Right. Let me throw some paint up against the wall and sell it for $500,000. I mean, come on.
Well, and if you saw some of this supposed artwork, it was like stick figure,
right?
Quality pictures that any child could draw on a
Yeah, let me go do that and let me sell my art for $500,000 a piece. Sure, why not?
Yeah, there's not really anything else to call it. I think you're right. I mean, it's got to be a money laundering thing, because how else do you justify,
It all came from one Democrat donor, is what I heard.
Gotcha. Well, and so in the case, they're saying that there was money coming from China and money coming from Ukraine. What was going on in Ukraine?
As far as I know, the Ukraine biolabs. That's what I know is going on in Ukraine.
Yeah, and there have been some stories about that lately, because
something about the Bidens being connected to those biolabs. There's a connection.
And what are they making in these labs?
We
don't know.
From my understanding, I've heard of gain of function study.
Oh, weird. That sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
So you're saying that he's taken money from China and Ukraine, and China and Ukraine both have gain of function research funded by the funded by the NIH, by the way. You know, that was proven in the congressional hearings, and Rand Paul thankfully you know, pointed a lot of that out, and all of it supervised by Dr. Fauci, who is nowhere to be seen anymore.
Where is he?
You know, he just disappeared from, you know, from the limelight all of a sudden. He doesn't want to interview with nobody or be seen on TV or anywhere. Where is this guy that is one of the highest, if not the highest paid government employee in our country? And is there going to be any accountability for the last 4 years? And the future, and anything that comes up in the future, because they're already talking about the next
disease X that they were talking about at the World Economic Forum. They were talking about disease X, and
at Davos. Wow.
Right. And that I believe is the next one that's coming.
The next one, because there's always a next one, which is crazy. It's crazy to think about. Like you know, you have to plan for the worst case scenario can always happen, right? Like the next bad thing to happen. But when you're expecting another pandemic, and if you look back at
Go ahead.
Well, if you look back at the last few decades, all of the major viral and you know, health pandemic catastrophes that we had, I'm talking about West Nile, Zika, swine flu, all of those happened during election years.
Exactly.
So why
coincidence? I don't think so.
I mean, maybe the answer is we just stop having American elections, and when we stop having elections in America, we won't have
all
any
the
more
diseases
pandemics.
will stop.
That's what they're trying to tell us, Annie. That's what they're trying to tell us.
Oh,
we figured it out. No more elections.
All right, we can quit the show
disease. Now. We can just quit the show. Yeah, good night, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. No, we still have a couple more things to talk about. But no, seriously, they can just, you know, that's really what the answer they want us all to come. They want us to come to that conclusion that when we just stop having elections and freedom and democracy and
you think that's that's the conclusion they want us to come to? Well,
they talk about it all the time. They talk about ending democracy. They say everybody else is doing it, but you know, our government, particularly the left, but our government, the deep, you know, what I would characterize as maybe the uniparty, the swamp.
Yes.
More than anything.
Yes.
They want us to believe that our choices threaten democracy, but the only thing our choices threaten is their power.
Is their narrative and their
narrative. Yeah. I mean, if we choose not them,
right?
If we choose none of these candidates,
right,
like they did in Nevada, okay,
and
against Nikki Haley,
and in Michigan against Joe Biden.
If we choose uncommitted, okay, if we go to the voting poll and we're uncommitted, we don't like any of these people, then that really only hurts them, and maybe that's what they
don't want us to know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's gaslighting, and it's in the worst way.
Absolutely.
So, and you know, going back to the Ukraine thing, you know, they've pushed this Ukraine narrative so hard. And of course, the Mitch McConnell video from 2016 was out that, you know, shows him talking about, oh yeah, the next year, or I think it was 2015, talking about 2017 will be that'll be the invasion. And they were all expecting, even the swamp Republicans were expecting Hillary Clinton to win the 2016 election, and she didn't. And we got an anti-war president. Thank you, Donald Trump, who didn't start any wars. That's why they hate him.
Right.
That's why
because he doesn't bend to them.
Right. He's anti-war, which they don't make money off of.
Right. And they fund both sides of the war.
Right. And the deep state has been in the business of overthrowing other governments since we annexed Hawaii. Mm-hmm. You know, I was watching a documentary earlier today, as a matter of fact, about the 100-year history of the CIA specifically in this case, but the deep state in the United States overthrowing governments. We overthrew the Hawaiian government and then annexed them as a state. We went into Cuba and Puerto Rico before Castro and took over the governments to get Spain out of there. Then we went to the Philippines and did the same thing.
What about Libya?
Yeah, then Libya, Iran. In the 60s, you had Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. Our government is, at least the deep state, has been focused on every other country but America. For the last 100 years, and especially the last 20. The last 20 or 25, it's been all about
the destruction of this country.
Yeah. So NATO now, you have Macron in France saying that they're going to send troops in.
Oh, the French are going to send troops.
The French are coming. Putin, you better look out. The French are coming for you.
Putin must be shaking in his boots. That's all I can say.
They can't They can't even deal with their own farmers.
No.
Have you seen what the farmers are doing in France?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hilarious, right? They are dumping manure and dirt in the streets and planting crops in the highways to protest regulation against the agricultural industry.
I love it.
How are people going to eat without farmers? Where do they think their food comes from?
They don't get it. They do not get it. And just like in New York, with the truckers?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay.
How do they think their food gets from the farm
I'm waiting to see
store?
what happens in the next week or so, because New Yorkers are going to be coming to they're going to face their what they've done.
Yeah.
What they voted for.
They don't grow a lot of food in the city of New York.
No.
They have a lot of mouths to feed. And that I think is the big problem. I mean, it's bad enough when when the internet goes out like it did last week with AT&T and everybody was panicked because the cell phones were down. That's bad enough. When people can't get food,
it's going to get really bad. It's going to get really, really bad. And that's going to start in New York.
Well, look what happened in Gaza this week. Okay. The UN finally gets aid for Gaza, which, the Palestinian people are going through hell, but that's war as hell. Okay. This is a real war. This isn't,
they started it.
One hand tied behind your back, Geneva Convention, BS. This is a real war. And, the people over there have been without food and supplies for a very long time. The UN finally drops aid into northern Gaza. 100+ people killed in the stampede, trampled by their friends and relatives over food and supplies.
That just goes to show you how desperate they are and how desperate people in New York are going to get.
That's what I'm saying. And this isn't a criticism of the Israelis either. I mean, this is the situation over there is unsolvable. Okay. While both of those groups of people are neighbors, they're never going to get along. And it's not up to us or anybody else to try and make them. Okay. Like they just don't like each other. But, and I know that's overly simplified, but the core of it is those two groups of people will never.
Their ideologies are just polar opposite.
You're fighting thousands of years of history,
right?
Thousands of years of hate. They're never going to get along. Okay, I mean, this is stuff that goes back to before Christianity and Islam, so. They trampled over 100 people, and then the media tried to blame it on the Israelis and say that they actually, one news source I saw said Israeli IDF soldiers are shooting civilians trying to get to the aid, trying to get to the supplies. That didn't happen at all.
Fake news.
And there's videos showing the crowds, the mobs of people trying to get to these supply crates.
But it's the Israeli soldiers shooting.
Yeah.
The Palestinians.
And that was quickly debunked, right? But it's the absurdity.
It's the getting that information out there, even if it's false, just to get it out there.
So France is going to go in and save Zelensky in Ukraine. And
I want to see this.
Of course, Putin's response is that NATO that if you put NATO troops, this will be World War III.
Exactly.
Like, we are at war with NATO if NATO troops. Now, that's kind of an obvious statement, right?
Obviously,
I mean, if NATO troops are there fighting them, then they are at war with each other.
Right.
I mean, it's not.
But it's the significance.
It's very significant.
Okay, it's the significance of what is happening. World War III, and it's nukes are going to come out.
Well, that's a terrible thing. That's a terrible prospect, and I almost hesitate to even go there, because it's so easy to say that and to be afraid of that possibility, but it's a very real possibility.
Someone is going to pull that car and pull that.
Well, I think the challenge for Russia is that if they feel like their livelihood and their existence is threatened, that is, in their doctrine, that is
a good enough reason.
That is how they would respond. They're not going to go down without taking out whoever is against them. So their war doctrine, they will. I mean, I believe him when he says we will launch them.
I believe him too.
And then you had, did you hear about what happened in the Capitol this week with the emergency meetings?
I did not.
Okay. So they had an emergency meeting between Mike Johnson, Mitch McConnell, and the White House about a Russian threat in space that they characterize as not urgent.
I did hear
highly
something about
concerning.
I did hear something about that. I like that. That not urgent but highly concerning. Which is it?
Yeah, it's either serious or it's not. But the leaks that have come out have said that they are putting nuclear weapons in space or something similar, maybe an EMP or some other device that can. The point is, they're attacking our communication.
Well, here's the thing, Dean. I don't see Russia as the bad guy. I see us as the bad guy.
In this case, maybe.
There's no maybe about it.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of crap. We have done a lot of crap around the world for years, and it's coming back to bite us on the butt.
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting in the Tucker interview with Putin. Did you watch any of that?
I did not.
You did not. Oh my gosh!
I know I've been.
We got to
really
get you caught up.
I know. I've been really bad
So Tucker does this whole interview with Putin, and Putin goes on like a 30-minute history of Ukraine and Russia. He talks about the origin of the Russian state and how the word Ukraine in the Russian language was a reference to living on the fringe or the edge, the border areas. So Ukraine quite literally means the borderlands. I'm sort of paraphrasing a little. And so that was his whole point in going into Ukraine, was that these are Russian people living in a state that was fabricated at the end of the Cold War, and based on geographic lines that were outlined at the end of World War II, simply just arbitrarily they were and what he says, not only are there Russian, not only are there Russian people living in Ukraine, but you also have I believe he said Hungarian, and you have people from other ethnicities.
Okay.
So it's not just ethnic Russians. Okay. That's what I was looking for, is ethnic. You have these ethnic groups that are, Hungarian and Polish, that are living in parts of Ukraine, and on the western side of Ukraine, the people are more Hungarian and Polish and, maybe Romanian, I don't know. And on the eastern side of Ukraine, where they've invaded, is all ethnic Russians. And so his point was, these are Russian people that want to live in Russia. Mm-hmm. They want to be part of our society, not some made up state that was fabricated at the end of the Cold War to divide the Russian people effectively. And that's what I got out of his interview with Tucker Carlson. Now, I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with the way he went about it. They've killed a generation of Ukrainians to take this land, and it may, how will that society under any flag recover from losing so many lives? But again, it's been made worse by our involvement.
Absolutely. But as far as I know, Russia went into Ukraine because of the biolabs and to exterminate the Nazis in Ukraine.
But do you think that's the full reason? Because I mean, he answered that in his interview with Tucker.
That was what I had heard in the past. So this interview just happened, and
he's said it in the past. He has said there are Nazis there.
There are Nazis, and the biolabs. The biolabs was the reason he went in.
I think the biolabs is a newer thing too that hasn't been as widely publicized in the first 2 years of the war, right?
I don't know how, because I mean, I knew about it.
Oh, you did? I
knew about it, but the thing is that the mainstream media is not talking about it.
Yeah.
So
and those biolabs are other places. I mean, we saw,
they're in China, they're
Tunisia.
Yeah.
Remember the ones in Tunisia where they were torturing little puppies? Like I don't know if did you see that one?
I can't.
Okay. All right. We won't talk about, I'm sorry.
Please.
Annie loves animals and dogs. I do too, by the way. We don't have them in the room here because they make a lot of noise sometimes. They get a little excited, but they, I
have the scars.
Yeah. It's terrible to think like that goes on in places in the world. And there are people that are not morally or ethically opposed to that for any reason. So
I know.
But speaking of moral and ethical standards, did you catch anything from CPAC this week? I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. But did you catch any of the?
I did not.
You watched Kristi Noem, didn't you?
I did. I did get to see her. She's the one I got to see, and she's great. I think she would make an excellent VP pick.
I've told you this. I've told a lot of people this. She has been my pick, like, for a while now.
I think it would be great for him to pick a woman.
Yeah.
And a woman who obviously is capable of doing the job. It's not just a woman, not just a man. It's whoever is capable of doing the job. And I think she's very capable of doing the job.
Well, she's a two-time governor, I believe, in South Dakota. So she's on her second term. So she has served in the executive branch of government at the state level. And I think, when you look at VP picks, of course we know what we have now. Okay. No executive branch experience.
A cackle.
Yeah. No executive branch experience. And
let's cackle at anything that is asked of us.
Yeah. Bob Marley. Right.
Oh.
And then we have prior to that, we had Mike Pence, and Mike Pence was a governor. So he could have stepped in. I think a lot of conservatives now probably realize we wouldn't want him to. Yeah. I just think he didn't have it in him to stand up.
No.
And take a stance. That was the problem.
He's towing the line.
But Kristi Noem, I think, very much would put her foot down. And what was interesting, one of the things I learned from her CPAC speech was she was the first governor to support Greg Abbott in this border standoff.
In a border standoff. Did she send National Guard?
She sent South Dakota National Guard to the border. She was the first governor to do so, and she sent razor wire, and she even offered to put it in her own truck and drive it there, which is a very, I love it. It very much reminded me of Sarah Palin. Remember when Sarah Palin was like, "I can see Russia from my house.
I can see Russia.
Don't you know, and Sarah Palin, I didn't dislike Sarah Palin, but Kristi Noem is the real deal. Like everything, that whole persona Sarah Palin was.
She comes across as serious. People. She comes across as serious that you can take her seriously. It was hard to take Sarah Palin seriously.
Yeah, so I think Sarah Palin meant well, but she was sort of like,
She was a cheerleader.
She was a cheerleader that wanted to have this like country rugged persona.
And look who she was running with. She was running with John McCain.
Yeah, that's a whole other problem. That's a whole problem. We can have a whole episode on why I didn't like John McCain, right? But Kristi Noem is the real deal. I mean, she was a cattle rancher, grew up on a cattle ranch, farmer. Right away, that tells me that she's got very different morals and values than
absolutely
most of America.
She's run her state very well.
Yeah. And the people there love her. And you know what she said? She said in South Dakota, people are having babies and they're happy. We have happy.
Maybe that's where we need to move to.
I know. Right? Like, believe me, I've thought of it. Like, except it's really cold there. That's
it's not terrible. It's beautiful. Beautiful state.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I would love to visit someday. But I mean, Kristi Noem was awesome at CPAC. The other one was Javier Milei. I heard Argentina. He was at CPAC.
I heard he was there.
And Trump acknowledged him several times in his speech, of course. Javier Milei is leading the Latin people back toward conservatism, and I love it too,
because I mean they have been socialist for so long. Yeah. But somebody was telling me that he met with Zelensky. And he did. I know that he did, but that doesn't mean anything.
Well, yeah, meeting with somebody isn't a bad thing.
It's not a terrible thing.
And I don't know. And I don't understand when it became a bad thing.
No, Trump met with Kim Jong-un.
He met with Kim Jong-un, and he had phone calls with Vladimir Putin. I would expect the American president to have phone calls with executive branches of other governments.
Exactly.
That's a normal thing.
Exactly.
Churchill had many meetings with Stalin and FDR. During the war, and that those relationships are normal and they're important.
Exactly.
They threatened Tucker Carlson. Tucker, he did a really good interview with Lex Friedman, and Lex Friedman's a great interviewer. I don't always watch his stuff because it's not always the most he's not an entertainer. But if you want to really get to the
actual news,
and the actual reporting, and when he's interviewing people, he's focused on what are they thinking and feeling. What is this person really about? And but it was a great interview. It was like 3 hours, and but Tucker talked a lot about the prep going into this interview with Putin, and his attorney said you will probably be arrested if you go there. Why? Because he sat down with the bad guy.
The bad guy.
Yeah, the quote unquote bad guy, right? I mean, and you mentioned, what was it, Sean Penn?
Sean Penn went and sat with Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
And there was no arrest there.
No, I mean,
nobody said anything. The media
and killed all his family,
and
and all his
Dennis Rodman going in to talk with Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, I mean,
they're buddies. They're best of friends.
But this idea that hearing what the other side has to say is somehow unethical or evil, I don't understand any of that. But yeah, I don't fault Milei for taking that meeting, and I think it's a pretty normal thing. Now, he may come out of it and say, "I'm not sending money to you," and he shouldn't.
Right?
We shouldn't.
I doubt he will. I doubt he's going to send money.
He's like, I don't think he's going to send him a dime. He's not going to. He'll be one of those that sends them a U-Haul to move to where the peace is. No, but Milei and also Bukele from.
From El Salvador.
He has really been tough on crime, and I think they're both examples in their own right of what we need in this country. We need to be tough on crime, and we need to focus on improving our life here for American people and American taxpayers, not not trying to.
Dean, are you saying that we shouldn't give all this money to the illegal immigrants who are coming into this country every day? What?
I'm saying we shouldn't be giving it to foreign governments so that they can then give it back to our corrupt politicians. Okay, that's what I'm saying. And, and money laundering it through terrible art, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean, and the irony of all this is they are the worst when it comes to gaslighting, because at the end, when it's all said and done, they're going to go on the nightly news on MSDNC or CBC or, you know, whatever it is, NBC, ABC, whatever. They're going to go on the mainstream media on the nightly news and say that the conservatives are trying to do this to you. And it's exactly out of their playbook. It's
exactly,
they are telling us what they're going to do before they do it, and they're going to accuse conservatives of being the perpetrators. And that's not how it's going down. So I don't believe any of it.
They externalize a lot.
Yeah. But Kristi Noem and Javier Milei, great show at CPAC. Loved both of them very much. And we're lucky to have have some leaders like that out there, I think. And, you know, Trump, of course, gave a great CPAC speech as well. He always does. I think at the end of it, he said, I'm going to get off stage so some of these other people can have a chance, because he says, I'm everybody's favorite speaker. It's somebody else's turn, which is not it's not kind of a Trump-like thing to say. So for him to acknowledge it, he's like, okay, yeah, we gotta give somebody else a turn to have the limelight. So good on him. But yeah, Trump did have a good, he had a very long speech, and we've got it up here behind us for our background today. It's amazing he keeps such a confident attitude with
everything that's happening right now
going on.
He amazes me every day. I mean, I don't know. Does this man is he a robot? Does he get sleep? I can't imagine him sleeping. I just can't.
He's got to at some point.
I know, right? I can't imagine him sleeping.
He's 80 years old. He's got to sleep sometime.
Yeah, but I think he sleeps 4 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, but it's you know, you talk about the gaslighting and everything they accuse Trump of.
They're doing everything that they're accusing the conservatives of. Everything.
This week it was Mad Cow. Rachel Mad Cow. She said if Trump gets reelected, it will be the end of
the election. Yeah, there will be no election.
He will make himself leader, you know, president for life.
Yes, please.
It's not,
I'm good with that.
But it's, well, I mean,
you know what I mean.
Peaceful transition of power is important to. It's core to our government in America.
But considering what the crap that we've had,
considering the alternative,
no,
we might welcome a dictator.
I just want him.
We might welcome a dictator if the way things are going. Like, this is, you know, it's gotten so crazy. But I mean, they hit him with this New York.
That $355 million.
What the hell?
Yeah. Oh, and that goes all to the state of New York because there were no victims. Okay. Right. So that goes all to the state of New York.
How convenient that the New York judge can just order him to pay this New York.
Wait. If you think that's crazy, how about a traffic court judge in Illinois kicking him off the ballot?
Well,
a traffic court
Did he have
judge.
Unpaid parking tickets? I have to ask. I mean, how did that situation even come up, right?
A traffic court judge.
How does that judge even get assigned to that?
I would love to know how she has the ability to kick him off the ballot.
Well, I believe Colorado was the first to do it, right?
Colorado was the first to do it, and then Maine.
And didn't the appellate court turn that over?
The Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court overturned.
The Supreme Court in Colorado held it.
The Colorado Supreme Court.
Yeah, they held.
But it didn't go to the federal courts.
It hasn't. It's going to the Supreme Court.
It's got to go to the. Yeah,
it's going to the Supreme Court.
Go to the Supreme Court.
The U.S.
They're the only ones. I mean, they're the only ones that can settle this.
Right.
We can't allow the states to have that kind of influence on the federal
level,
on the federal election.
Right.
Those things need to be separate.
Exactly.
The state needs to control their elections, and the federal government needs to have their rules for their elections.
Right.
And everybody's got to play by the same rules. You know, I mean,
that's why I don't understand these laws that are different in states and these voting laws. I mean, I think they should be unilateral across the board.
Well, the 2020 election was a mess, but it wasn't the first election that was a mess.
No.
And as Floridians, I mean, living in Florida, we know Palm Beach County messed it up. Palm Beach County has messed up, single-handedly messed up at least 2 elections that we know about. Okay. Palm Beach County is notoriously bad at counting votes. They've had the same supervisor of election for 20 years, and they don't replace her. They just
that
roll with
a
it.
problem.
I guess they just roll with it. I don't even know. It's I guess, are people just so fed up and that they just don't care, or they just don't think that there's another option? Nobody else wants the job.
I don't think people are so engaged that they realize what the hell's going on. Yeah. I that's the problem. People are so busy trying to make a living and trying to pay their bills and keep up with their kids, and they just don't have the time to pay attention.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Trump won the 2016 election, but we still had problems in Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
They couldn't count the votes for days. It was a problem. And so it just, yeah, the Supreme Court needs to make a rule on this. I mean, you can't have liberal judges or any judges in a state
just deciding arbitrarily.
Think of it. That one judge took the option away for all of the constituents in the state of Colorado. One judge took the choice away.
Right.
They talk about destroying democracy. One judge did it from the bench.
Right. But here's what my pet peeve about this whole, democracy bullshit. Oh, excuse me.
It's okay. We're past the 40 after like the first minute of the video. We can get away with a little bit, but yeah, we got to be careful. We got to watch those words a little bit. We're already on YouTube's ban list just for being who we are,
of course,
just for being on the side we're on.
Of course. But this whole democracy thing, we're a constitutional republic. And people think that we're a democracy. We're not a democracy. If we were a democracy, it would be definitely 2 systems for sure. It would be the poor and the mega rich. There would be no in between. There would be no middle class. So this is not a democracy. It's not. We're a constitutional republic. And I'm sick and tired of people saying they're destroying our democracy.
Well, we're a representative democracy, and I mean, constitutional republic's not really a form of government. I guess it's what people call our government.
We are a constitutional republic,
but it's a representative democracy. We have representatives, but we get to choose them. Versus like Rome was a republic,
right?
Okay, but Rome, the senators and the representatives were appointed; they weren't chosen by the people,
right? But people are using the democracy thing. They're going way too far, I think, with the word.
Understood. And that's probably why people have started calling it a constitutional republic. But, we are a democratic republic, meaning that we choose our representatives by a democratic process. But then from there, we are a representative republic.
Right.
And it's, the founding fathers of this country, they were smart people. They read a lot. They didn't have TV and radio and much less TikTok to ruin.
No Facebook.
No TikTok.
Oh.
They weren't getting their information from TikTok and the Chinese government. But they studied history. They were biblical scholars, but they also studied history, and they looked at Athens and the Greeks and their democratic process and said, well, that sounds nice because the people have a say. But then they looked at the Roman model and said, well, you can't have everybody vote on every issue because you never get anything done, which, to me as a minimist libertarian, I think that's wonderful. Let's just clog government up and not let them do anything. That's a great scenario for most days. But, it's not a perfect system. It's a system we have, and it works pretty well.
It's probably about the best one.
We don't have anything better to replace it with.
Right. So, now what gets me is that the founding fathers were extremely young. They were
some of them. Ben Franklin was very old, and a few were, but yeah, most of them were actually really young. Yeah.
really young.
Well, they didn't live as long. They didn't have.
Right. No, I understood. But think about it. 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah, a lot of them were in their 20s.
And you think about
early. Yeah.
You think about 20-year-olds now. There's no way. There's no way they have the capability or the mental capability to.
We had some older ones like Washington that were,
Sure, no, I get that, but when you think about it,
the younger,
think about it. 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds nowadays.
Oh God, I don't. I mean, yeah,
can you imagine them drafting?
I don't know how some of them get up and function every day. I mean, some of these kids, especially like the college age. We won't even talk about the high schoolers, but just the college age 20-year-olds. Gosh, the education system has failed them and
completely. They think they know it all.
It's bad enough that they are living in crippling hyperinflation. They can't afford to support themselves. They can't afford their own housing. That's
They have to live with mom and dad.
Yeah, which isn't the worst thing. People in other parts of the world do that. I mean, there are many cultures in the world where multiple generations live together.
Sure.
It hasn't been the norm in America because we've had this idea that you should be able to support yourself as soon as you become an adult. But hyperinflation has made that impossible for most people. And one of the stats I saw today was about 45% of the 18 to 20, I believe it was 24-year-old crowd are still living at home. And so that's a huge change from our historical trends in this country if you look at the last 50 years.
But the huge change also is what I'm talking about is the maturity level.
Not just maturity, but just they don't know anything.
Right. They don't.
They don't have life experience. They don't know anything. They don't know how to do very much.
Because they're always on their damn phones.
The irony is that, the phone has a wealth of information
and knowledge.
But it's not in the places they're looking.
Right.
Okay, their eyes are on TikTok and Snapchat and Tinder.
Facebook.
Facebook is bad enough, yeah. Gosh, but they have a wealth of information. They're not seeking those things out because they're being spoon-fed the information. This is why TikTok is so dangerous.
Their brains are being numbed.
This is why TikTok is so dangerous for if anybody watches this and goes, why do conservatives have a problem with TikTok? Here is why. Because when you are spoon-fed the information, you only know what you are shown and what you are given. TikTok spoon-feeds information to people, and it controls what people see because they are not looking beyond that space, that sphere of influence. And that sphere of influence is controlled by the CCP. Okay? TikTok is rolled up in WeChat, and the Chinese government has their hands in every Chinese business. There's no private property in China because it's communism. So they have influence over what we see in America, and they alter what we see to influence our culture, and they show different things to their own people to influence their culture. And 20 years ago, Southeast Asian countries had a problem where their men were being less masculine, and they weren't doing things like playing sports and being competitive with each other, and they've turned that around. And I think this coming generation, when we look at like Gen Alpha, which are the kids that are almost into high school, okay, and which is scary to think about. But when we look at like the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, I guess they're really like the young kids, but when we look at the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas that are coming up over the next 20 years into the workforce, they're not going to have any skills. They're not going to have confidence to do anything. They're not going to know how to do anything without being told what to do. And it's a scary prospect. We have really 3 generations back to back to back becoming progressively less and less competent, less and less skilled, and less informed. And
then you have AI coming.
Yeah. Well, these kids,
which is a double-edged sword.
Well, these kids, the Gen Zs that are like in college now, they are using AI to do their homework.
I know.
And it's a problem.
I know.
It's a problem because the teacher, can't always prove it necessarily, right? They can't prove it. The kids are getting a grade.
And they're having AI write their term papers.
Yeah. And heaven forbid you give them a bad grade, because then you're a racist or you're hateful or whatever. So, I mean, we've got some problems. The light at the end of the tunnel is we've got some good leaders in the queue, and hopefully we will see more of that in the future. So, but that about wraps it up for today. I think we got through a lot of topics today.
I think we did too.
There's so much more happening right now, everybody. Please stay tuned. We want to get more of these episodes out to you. We'll have more information coming.
We got lots of rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah, but stay informed. Don't just watch one source of information. We're just people. We're not journalists. We're people with opinions. We watch lots of different sources and get our information from different places. We encourage you to do the same and form your own opinions. And so
absolutely.
Yeah. So until then, thank you for watching. I'm Dean. This has been Annie. Thank you for standing in for Andrew today. We miss him. Hopefully he'll be back Andrew. Next time. But please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we will catch you all in the next video.